All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Good morning to all of you. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening today. We are live in Las Vegas. Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook is where you can like and follow all of my social media platforms. Also, subscribe to the home of the Snake Sports Talk Show. That is the Spotlight Sports Network and the Snake Sports Talk Show, and follow me on Spotify for all of my latest episodes. I hope all of you guys have had a great 4th of July yesterday. So much fun. Hope you guys were safe. Yeah, it was so much fun. You know, we got together with really good friends of ours and, just had a great time, lighting up fireworks, eating some real good barbecue. And just enjoying the good times, just enjoying the times that feel simple, and so it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And I hope that all of you had enjoyed it yourselves as well. Because I know that there were a lot of challenges behind it, but, at the same time, it seemed like everybody was having a great time. It seemed like everybody, basically just got together with friends, and it just seemed simple. There was nothing that was complicating. There was nothing at all that, basically just caught everybody's attention. So it was a lot of fun, and I hope you guys had a great time. So, I came across this. Today. Yesterday, while I was out, getting myself some really, really good lunch, I turned around and I noticed this. I was watching something here on television, and I never thought that I would be able to get the content to actually kind of get a preview of what it may look like by the time that the NBA comes back. So there was some content. It was by TBT Basketball. It's like a basketball organization. What it was a winner-take-all tournament, and it's not G League. It's definitely not the G League, but it's more of like a semi-pro league, somewhere where they get you get teams together, play up in this tournament. I think they said there was a total of 24 teams altogether. And from the looks of it, it looked like they were playing their tournament in Ohio. And from the look of this, because this is what I had seen, this is where it kind of blueprinted and mapped out here in my head, is you have no fans in the stands, number one. Number two, players is 5-on-5. You have the players that sit on the bench. They're about 6 feet apart. The coaches, they're safe. And then you also have the officials. So it led to my point about the NBA and especially the bubble in Orlando. Because, again, I think that the NBA is going to have some challenges. Not to say that the NFL won't, because of the fact of the only people that are held accountable are the linemen, both offensively and defensively. Even though that they're fully padded and fully geared, does not take away the fact that, both of them, one side's trying to protect, the other is trying to collapse the pocket. And so there are a lot of contacts involved. And that's something that poses a question. How will that pan out? How will it work? In hockey, you're not dealing with too much, but there are going to be some challenges, because think about it. You also have man-to-man coverage and defenses when it comes to hockey, especially on the defensive side. Even that might end up being a challenge. And then finally, I mean, baseball, everybody is spaced out. They have plenty of room. The only people who are held accountable are the ones that are at a home plate. That's the batter, that's the catcher, and that is the umpire. 3 people. So when I watched this, and I made sure too that this was something that was actually going on, and it was. And then the second I ended up watching it, I only watched it maybe for about a few minutes or so, but it made it kind of clear in my mind. Because my only thought about how the NBA might work this out is they would end up testing before and test after games. And that's something that I think is smart, is safe, and holds a lot of accountability for everybody. That's players, that's coaches, that's staffs, that's everybody that's involved. But you kind of got a really good look at what it may look like when the NBA returns, which was the type of content I was looking for a while. I wasn't sure how the NBA was going to play this out. And remember, the NBA has until the end of this month. And that's something that I think the NBA has mapped out. There's something that they have worked out for sure. And Adam Silver's working this thing out. But interestingly enough, that a semi-pro organization holds a 24-team bracket tournament, and I got a really, really good look at what that looks like for the NBA. I think personally, because I didn't think it may end up being as easy as it comes, but I do think that there are challenges involved. But then at the same time, after watching that tournament, I think NBA's got a real good shot. Only time will tell. And however they have this thing mapped out is going to be something that the NBA, I'm sure, is going to be looking more deep into detail. All right, let me shift to this. So because we understand of what is happening, the uncertainties, we haven't really come to a full conclusion yet of what this virus is capable of. We haven't. Because now, in this phase, in this moment of this month, and we've had it a couple of days before, but now in this month of July, all these tests are coming out. All of these players are now getting tested, and they're all seeing if they pass or they're tested positive. Now lots of players are tested positive. There's not a whole lot. There's only about a certain percentage. But players, and I've seen this, there were a couple of players, star players who I've seen who have caught the virus. And then it poses questions. Now, in baseball, they had their tests. And the notable names that you saw there were Freddie Freeman, Miguel Sano, Salvador Perez, and I'm sure a couple of others. So because there were 4 Braves, 4 Twins players who caught the virus, and just so happens to be those 3 superstars who ended up getting it. Salvador Perez, his symptoms were asymptomatic, and now it's posing this question of what could possibly happen in the next couple of weeks. Because we understand that test after test after test, everybody is going to get tested. And we know that the numbers could be not shockingly high, but it may shock some people of how many people either catch the virus or get tested positive and how they're going to end up dealing with it. And this is a big deal because NBA is trying to come back this month. Major League Baseball is trying to come back this month. And the NHL, they've got their plans of trying to come back this month. And now there are even 4 notable Blues players who have also tested positive for the coronavirus. And so this is something that, again, in times of uncertainty, we haven't even pinpointed what this virus is capable of. There are still some numerous tests that are going on, and we don't know. We are in times of uncertainty. We have no idea what this virus is capable of. And it's something that is uncertain to the public's eye. Because here's the thing. We hear it from a lot of people all the time. We hear it from conspiracy theorists. We hear it from certified doctors and nurses. We hear it from so many people. There's too many voices in the room that we have no idea what this is. We have no idea. And because of all of the too many voices in the room, we can't even figure it out. We can't even have a pinpoint, like, exact detail of what this virus is and what it is capable of and how do we suppress it. We have no idea. And that is something that I think is a big challenge to all of us, as people, and even from not even just nationwide, but even around the world. We have no idea. And we know that we're slowly trying to get sports back. We understand that. We know that a lot of the risks and the safeties and the hazards and the regulations that go by it. You could think of out here in Vegas, it's mandatory now to be wearing masks in public. There are certain rules and regulations, and those are the things. These are the things that I choose. That to me personally, in my personal life, I choose to follow. I choose to follow the rules and regulations only because you just never know. You just never know at any point, wherever you may be or wherever you go, even if you get symptoms or if you catch it one way or another. It's uncertain. That's why a lot of, and a lot of people and a lot of conspiracy theorists throughout this whole thing have been coming with one side of the story, then another, and then here's another story. And there's too many stories now to count. How do we suppress the virus should be the real question. But only time will tell. Only time will tell when the right people in the right places have an exact pinpoint idea of what it is, how do we suppress it, and hoping that we can get normalcy back. We have parts of normalcy there, but I've said this multiple times. I feel like we may end up going back into where we once were in the fall because there are more and more tests, there are more and more cases, and we don't have a pinpoint of what this virus is capable of. We don't. That is the kind of uncertainty that shocks a lot of people. And everybody wants to go back to their normal lives. Everybody wants to enjoy it the best way possible. But again, we're all hit with this curveball. We do not know what to do about this. Now, we have rules and regulations to try to hold on for as long as we can, but eventually there's going to need to be something to help suppress this, and suppress this, I'd hope, at the best pace possible. Only a matter of time, but it's also a matter of us as people to stay safe, stay healthy, be courteous and cautious to one another, help each other out, because teamwork itself makes the dream work. That's the one thing that I can say about it. But all these tests from here and these notable players, I'm happy that we were getting sports back one way or another. But now there's a lot of these posing questions, and we're uncertain. We have no idea. We have no idea, and only time will tell in the coming days. Coming up next, it was interesting. I ended up hearing about this segment about NHL, something that I think kind of really not shocked me, but made me think about hockey as a whole. And there's a segment there that I ended up watching and listening that I think brought my attention. Because long story short, there was a saying that there's not a whole lot of superstars in hockey. And I'm going to give my side of the story about the hockey players and saying that, no, there is some. And I'll explain that later, coming up next here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. All right, everybody. If you are just tuning in here on the Snake Sports Talk Show, welcome, welcome. I appreciate all of you guys hopping on. And, it's a beautiful day on a Sunday. Not too much planned around, that's just kind of me when it comes to Sundays. I usually like to have chill Sundays, some Sundays where, I get some stuff done around the house and, just kind of enjoy myself. It's a little bit of like a break for me, and I enjoy it. So, not exactly sure what I have in store this morning, so it'll be fun. It's going to be fun times for today. So, there was something that really caught my attention because earlier we talked a lot about baseball and the position that they were in with this back and forth bickering between the owners and the players. I gave my piece about it until finally we've come to this long conclusion. Now we're playing 60 games in the season. During that, and it was interesting because I watched a segment on the Herd about all of it, like just the popularity of each sport. That's the NFL, that's the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, and MLS. All five of those in those exact categories. NFL being number one because the fact of NFL's king. You have schedules. You have now shortened the preseason to 2 games, which I'm fine with. I'm happy with it. Still have preseason games for these players, but they got a plan. And people bet on it. People play fantasy football. Everybody's tuned in and locked in. The NBA, people love it because it's got superstars. There's also some international play because there are some international players, from Slovakia, so many places around the country that even when we watch the Olympics, we get a chance to see all of these international players. Now, baseball is in the middle at number 3 because, and this is my opinion with it, baseball being America's pastime, which, they're kind of walking on thin ice with that name. But, however, baseball, of course, does have a minor league system. That's usually how it is because you have single, double, triple A until you get to the major leagues. I have a really good friend of mine I went to high school with who's currently in the minor league system for the Pirates. And it always showed what you're capable of. It's a builder's league. You build yourself to the best of the extent from the minor league systems until you get to the major leagues. Till you have shown enough that you're capable in the major league level. Now, it is very it's half and half international and also, American based. Because we do have American-born players, but we also do recruit a lot of players from Japan. We recruit players from Puerto Rico, Cuba, Dominicans. There are an awful lot of Dominican players who are out there that they're something else. They are very talented. There are some we love and some that we just can't stand. Like it happens. It happens. We get that. Now, there was one segment about hockey. And this is something that I will play from here. But this is kind of something that really caught my attention that I figured I'd voice out on that. Here was Colin Cowherd talking about the popularities of sports.
Then let's go to number 4, hockey. Oh, it's not ours. No, it's not ours at all. We don't like that. The Olympics, we root for America. It's not our sport. Canada's better. Europe's better. It doesn't have very marketable stars. It's got a long regular season like the NBA, not as long, but it's not very good on television. It's not very good on television. Now, it's fast, it's fun, it's got regulated violence, but all these leagues in America are controlled by television. It's not very appealing on television. And again, it's not ours. And it is also, it's very international. Now let's go to number 5, soccer.
So I'm going to make a point about this one. I understand what the view and what the opinion is pinpointed. Listen, I will tell you this. Hockey, and this is where I became a big-time hockey fan the second, Vegas expanded as a franchise in 2017. Been a fan since day one. And I will tell you this. I have watched bits and pieces of hockey even growing up because my family, parts of them that live out in New York, they'd watch the Rangers. My mom, she grew up in New York for, as a kid. And she does remember going to the Coliseums, watching the Islanders games. And the Coliseum was very different back then versus what it is now. I mean, after lots of reconstruction, lots of renovations, now it's actually looking really, really good. But I will contest this, that hockey honestly has grown to a point where there are lots of superstars. Yes, I understand it's very international because you don't get to, here's the thing. When you talk about very few marketable stars, which ones are you mentioning? Are you talking about the ones that are American based, or are you talking about the ones that are international? What is that? If you're talking about the ones that are American based, I mean, Austin Matthews, Patrick Kane, TJ Oshie, the Brady Shea. There are lots of players, maybe not a ton of American-born players, but there are superstars out there. I mean, think about it. Every organization in hockey, and yes, we have, the Canadian-based teams like Calgary, Winnipeg, Toronto, Edmonton. We have a lot of these. Vancouver, another one. We have a lot. We do have teams that are in Canada. And how can we forget Montreal? One of the oldest yet most competitive franchise since the league itself had started. They were the Yankees of hockey. So when you look at how hockey is based upon now, what are some of the big things that we love about hockey nowadays? Oh, we love goals. Yes, we absolutely love seeing players slap shots, hit the goals, whether it's game winner, go aheads, something that gives your team the lead, or at least gives you a startup. We love that because it's always a Kickstarter. And we love the fact that after goals, everybody celebrates. They got their cellies. We love that. What's the other thing we love? Oh, we love those hits. We love those hard hits. We love the hits that are, number one, that was intentional, because depending on it, and then there are some that you just didn't see coming. And we're not saying that we're big on regulated violences. We're not trying to say that, we want this guy to get hurt. But we enjoy that because it's an adrenaline rush. I've been to 13 Golden Knights games here in Vegas. And every time when I see a goal, every time when I see a hit, every time when I see something that's spectacular, I mean, I'll be honest, it is a rush. It is an absolute rush. And what's big about that is because when you think about the crowd, you think about the energy, how everybody is on their feet in the stands or whether in the stand-up seats, and everybody loves it. That's where the energy itself feeds up. And opposing teams get nervous about that. They get very, very nervous about that. But talking about very few regulated stars, I'll make an argument. There are lots and lots of superstars all around, whether it's both American or international. I mean, think of it this way. Sidney Crosby is, I'd say, arguably one of the greatest hockey players currently in the NHL. Everyone could probably say it's Connor McDavid, but here's the thing. Connor McDavid is still young enough. Okay, how many playoff appearances has Connor McDavid already gone through? Okay, we know he's won the Hart Trophy. We know that he's shown to be one of the best up-and-coming rising stars. I mean, I've said this before. He's like the Mike Trout of hockey. But when you look at Sidney Crosby and the accomplishments that he has made over the years with Pittsburgh, getting Pittsburgh to playoffs, winning 3 Stanley Cups, Sidney Crosby's a one of a kind. You also got other superstars as well. I mean, think about it. You even had superstars from back then. Mario Lemieux, Wayne Gretzky, Lanny McDonald, Patrick Waugh, Joe Sakic. You have a lot of different superstars. Martin Brodeur. And you look at today, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Connor McDavid. Now you got other up-and-coming stars like Leon Draisaitl, Nathan McKinnon, Ben Bishop, Nikita Kucherov, Steven Stamkos. This list could go on for days. But I would not say that it isn't too marketable for big-time stars. There's a fact to that because we know how much is in the budget for hockey. Okay, the budgeting in hockey is low. That's why you see all of the gears whenever you go to some of these sports shops and how expensive they are. Because they know in a market and in an organization like the NHL, I mean, with Commissioner Gary Bettman, that's the generated revenue that they get. That's why equipments are so expensive as well. I mean, goalie equipment is so expensive. And that's the part that I think pushes more of the need of dedication to it. Like, you buy the stuff, you definitely got to play it. You know, and that goes the same for baseball. I mean, baseball equipment, they're semi-expensive as well. And because there are lots of kids who either play in little leagues, junior leagues, major leagues, minors, and club ball. They go everywhere. And then you even see the kids that showcase their skills on the Little League World Series. You know, so I'll tell you this. I mean, hockey would be absolutely screaming out of their minds if they had contracts like the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball. They would be going out of their minds if they had a contract like that. But unfortunately, they don't. You know who has the highest contract in hockey? Oh, I could argue there are two players who do. That's Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. 8 years, and each of those years they're getting paid $13 a year. That's the highest they get paid. And they're very remarkable players. I mean, Chicago has won 3 Stanley Cups in the 2010s era. And, you know, they still are arguably the biggest superstars in hockey. But I could tell you, when I heard that, hearing about very less amount of marketable stars, that's where I had to kind of come in and enlighten a little bit more on the subject. Not trying to argue the position, because we understand exactly where the position is in hockey. And I will tell you this, because I'm not the one that, like, when I look at this and I think about this, is it something that eventually hockey is just going to hop over Major League Baseball? To me personally, I don't think so. But depending on how Major League Baseball deals with all this, it could potentially be a possibility. It could be potentially a possibility. And the only reason why is because hockey they've had a plan. They have had a plan since all this went down. They had a plan to bring sports back. They finished the season. They're now in Stanley Cup playoff mode. And, you know, now they have their plan. And baseball, it took them long enough until they got to 60 games. Now there's a trade deadline, and now there's an extended playoffs, which there should have been. But this is interesting. It's interesting to me. But if it gets to the point where baseball, there is so much of like just this utter nonsense and all this back and forth, then we might see it. We might see it. But until then, they're perfectly fine exactly in that category. Time now for this for the hot press. So this has been an ongoing situation now as you know, because we started talking about these organizations and we started talking about these names. This has been an ongoing situation. So the Washington Redskins, of course, they're the owners. They're working on new nicknames for the Washington Redskins, because now there's just been so much of this back and forth complaints about the name and all this. So Ron Rivera was interviewed and had been working with owner Dan Snyder on potentially a new nickname in the recent weeks. And he says, if we get it done in time for the season, it would be awesome. We came up with a couple of names. Two of them I really like, and didn't want to reveal the names just yet, and which happens. But this is just really odd to me. This is just really odd to me with this name change and all this other stuff, because not only is it just the Washington Redskins, but now it's the Cleveland Indians. And I don't get that, because the only thing the Cleveland Indians had done, truthfully, is they took away Chief Wahoo, the actual Chief Indian that you usually saw on ball caps and sometimes on jerseys. They took that logo away, and now it's just a regular C. And to me, it kind of boggles my mind about that. Now, the only team that they've mentioned about that it's definitely not changing their names is the Atlanta Braves. And I agree with that, because honestly, I'm like, why? Why would we end up changing the Atlanta Braves name? I mean, I don't really see any kind of offense to it. I really, really don't. Because I remembered in the last postseason last year where somebody ended up complaining because of this chop and the chants. But really? And especially when you got postseason baseball going on, and this was someone that was within the Cardinals organization that made the complaint about it. To me, I thought it was just complete, utter nonsense. But this is just one of those interesting stories. I'm not sure how they're going to work this all out, but apparently, they're taking the time to find new nicknames. And so I guess in the coming weeks, we will find out what the new nickname may be. It may be a little weird at first, because for years we've seen the Washington Redskins. I mean, we remembered the years when they win Super Bowls. I mean, Doug Williams was a fabulous and fantastic quarterback. We've never had any complaints from there. And by the way, fans in Washington wasn't only just about the Indians, but you saw a lot of those fans, and they wore like these hog masks. So it just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me, but this is something that I think is probably one of the most interesting stories I've ever come across. But so yesterday, because baseball getting back into the shape of things, the New York Yankees unfortunately had to come to a fork on the road, as their starting pitcher Masahiro Tanaka, he has officially been released out of the hospital after taking a line drive to the head. So when this happened, they were basically trying to go through regulated pitches, and I will tell you this, I'll break this down a little bit, but there were regulated pitches. Giancarlo Stanton was the batter, and so they were having practices there. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Stanton just hits a line drive right back at Tanaka and hits him right in the head. And this is what we've been told from manager Aaron Boone, that Masahiro Tanaka had concussion-like symptoms that have since dissipated. He went through a battery of tests at the hospital, and everything checked out well. He had a CT scan, and it's negative. He's still there. They're going to keep them for a couple of more hours just to be safe, but we expect him to be released this evening. I would say right now he's doing well. So in a sense, that's kind of, bittersweet, because here's the good news. The good news is at least he's good. He's okay. He's unconscious, and and it is scary. It is a scary thought. Here's the bad news behind it. I mean, the Yankees, as I've said, this season, if we were going to end up getting it back, this was going to be the pathway for the Yankees-Dodgers World Series. I've said this multiple times, because the Yankees now have everybody healthy. Well, now, at least almost everybody. And then same with the Dodgers. But now with this, and here's the one thing that I question about all the time. Where was the L screen? Why did nobody have an L screen at the pitcher's mound? You've been away from the field and from baseball for months. I mean, the last time any of them played was during spring training, and there's no L screen there for protection. It didn't make any sense to me. And so that's the part that I think they're probably going to look back at and go, oh, no, well, that was a bad idea. Oh, you think? I mean, think about it. When you feel exactly what when you actually get a feeling of what it feels like to have a line drive, especially by Giancarlo Stanton, one of the hardest hitters, it's painful. It's absolutely painful. I mean, think about it. That's just the thing. And finally, newly acquired Dodgers pitcher David Price said that he will not play this season um, due to just the health concerns of the pandemic, which is fine, and I get that. And there are a lot of other players who have also took a stand. Ryan Zimmerman and Joe Ross of the Washington Nationals, Ian Desmond of the Rockies, Mike Leake of the Diamondbacks, and there may be a couple more players on the list as well. And this is what he had said on social media. After considerable thought and discussion with my family and the Dodgers, I have decided it is in the best of my health and my family's health for me to not play this season. I will miss my teammates and will be cheering for them throughout the season and onto a World Series victory. I'm sorry I won't be playing for you this year, but look forward to representing you next year. So, this is interesting. But it is an understanding because there are a lot of uncertainties and there are a lot of concerns. And again, we haven't pinpointed exactly what this virus is capable of. But those players who had taken a stand, a lot of them, like that's the concern. Yes, family is absolutely important, because when you are away playing baseball, and the last thing you want to do is leaving your family where they're trying to do what they need to do in order to stay healthy and stay safe. But then throughout all of this, you go and you're playing baseball and you're not there with your family. It's tough. It's absolutely tough. And that's something that is understandable. We've seen NBA players take stands. We've seen them take stands. Some NFL players, and even I haven't even heard the latest from hockey players, but this is something that has really kind of grown the attention and something that I think is going to be interesting for the next couple days ahead. So that was your hot press. Coming up next, since we've shortened this up here to an hour today, I'll have at least a little bit of like my best for last. Because I think it's I could tell you right now, this is what's been challenging is trying to map all of this out with sports, knowing that we got tests going on that are ongoing and trying to fit, we were getting results, we're getting cases, but we're still trying to pinpoint exactly this virus. And it's tough. And it's really tough too, to just map everything out with sports comebacks while this is all going on. And I've never come across something like this. But and the best for last, I mean, since we have the NBA coming back, there are a few things that I think that we can expect, and I'm going to give my opinion on that coming up next. All right, folks. Well, I hope all of you guys are having a really, really good Sunday and hope you guys have had a great weekend and a great 4th of July as well. So glad that I've had all of you guys here on today. It was definitely a fun weekend and fun-filled show for sure. We had a lot that we were talking about all throughout this week, and so glad to have had all of you guys here today. So here's the one thing that I could tell you, and I don't have any plans whatsoever. Like, I'm not here kind of explaining my version of plans for the NBA because we already know exactly what the plans are in place. But what I will kind of talk a little bit about are just some possibilities that might end up going on once we get this season kicked up and we start to kind of get ourselves up into playoff mode for the NBA. Because again, like I said, if it hadn't had been for that tournament that was televised yesterday, I wouldn't have been able to get at least a clear pinpoint thought as to how we were going to end up doing this thing, how we were going to end up making this happen the best and safest way possible without it, basically putting a lot of people's lives in jeopardy, making sure that everybody's courteous to one another and stays healthy and stays safe. And so I think that this was interesting. And it kind of gave me a clear view and a clear idea of what the NBA could look like. Once it starts to come back by the end of this month, we may actually have a better understanding and maybe a better pinpointed idea of this plan. So here are a couple of possibilities that I think, in my opinion, which I think would be really, really good for the NBA. So the possibilities of this is because, number one, you have tests before and after games. That's the most important thing because, of course, basketball is a conditioning sport. It's a conditioning sport where these players are running back and forth on the court for 4 quarters. You figure about an hour or so, maybe even more than that, hour and a half, whatever the case may be. But you've got players who run down the court back and forth, and there's a lot of generated sweat, and a lot of players are breathing heavily. And it's going to be a difficult challenge as well because, number one, the question is, how good is your health? How good is your fitness? Because if it gets to the point where these players are basically rusted, it may pose a lot of questions, may pose an awful lot of questions, and may have at least somewhat of a concern from all of this. But that is something that I think for the NBA is a real good possibility on how they're going to plan this thing out and how they're going to map this out. Tests before and after games, I think, is smart because at the very least, it holds the players accountable, holds the coaching staff and the staffs themselves accountable through everything that's going on, especially in this bubble in Orlando. So the other possibility as well, I think personally, because I again, when I watched this, I had seen exactly how they regulated this. Players were kind of sitting on the benches about 6 feet apart, and the coaches, of course, was kind of in his own regulated spot. Just kind of walking around, getting a little bit of a break here and there, but at least they have the coach at a good spot where he's not vulnerable to this virus, even though it's something that's potentially going around, but it's something that keeps him safe. So there's that in place that I really, really did like. And when I'd seen it in this tournament, I thought it was great. I thought it was interesting. And the fact that there are no fans in the stands, that'll be the other possibility with that. That's the one thing, not even a possibility, but we know that that's a guarantee. But the one thing of it is they could play this without fans. They can play this without fans. Now, it is going to be tough because think of it this way. You remember, I'm sure a lot of people remember this, but you ever remember going to, some of these recreational centers and how they have their indoor basketball because, of course, you had the youth league sports that played, and they usually always played in the recreational centers. This to me feels like it. Or sometimes it feels to me a little bit of like, you're playing in street basketball. You're playing at one of the local parks. And that's kind of just the feel with me with the NBA and what they're going to end up going through. The fact that there are going to be no fans in the stands is exactly the feeling I think the NBA players are going to go through. It's just like as if you're kind of waking up as a kid. You go and you play with your friends over at one of the local parks, at one of the courts, or you're going to the recreational centers. You're playing in the indoor courts. However you're playing this out. But that, I think, is going to be the experience that the players are going to go through. And I'm sure it might end up bringing at least a little bit of some memories when they were kids and how they were kind of dealing with all this. Finally, the other possibility as well. I think the other possibility as well for the NBA, and this is something that I think kind of catches my attention with it, is I just think that at the end of the day, hopefully we do have playoffs. I surely do believe we do. But this is going to be interesting for me. Is the length of the playoffs, what the possibilities are with that, how they're going to regulate all of this. And that is something, my colleagues and I off the air, we've talked about it. And to me, it's like, you pinpoint the dates because, there are going to be some clashes with sports. There's going to be clash with hockey. There's going to be clash with baseball. There's going to be clash with football. Everybody's going to basically collide in with each other because the date schedules and how they're willing to try to balance this out. That's not going to be easy. That's not going to be easy for a lot of people. And that is something that I think is one that's worth the challenge, but is a heck of a challenge for sure. But after seeing all of this with this tournament, I have real good hopes. I don't have high hopes, but I have good hopes of what the NBA is going to look like by the time that we get it back. It's really, really good hopes. So, those are just the possibilities that I have. Those are just the possibilities that I do think is something that may potentially go on, that may potentially be the piece of the plan, but this is something that, again, the organization has mapped out. This is what they have in store when this bubble when the players get into this bubble and how they're going to play this out. This is the one that again, it's uncertain and it's unexplainable. But this is a challenge that I don't think either of us will ever forget. But it was really, really good having all of you guys on. I appreciate you guys hopping on in, checking out the show and stuff like that. Remember, subscribe to the Spotlight Sports Network, your home for the Snake Sports Talk Show. Also, like me and follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for all of my social media platforms. And follow me on Spotify for all of my latest podcast episodes. I'm going to be making a comeback with some recap shows on my podcast episode. I can't wait to have that back on. Going to be excited. It's going to be a lot of different changes, but can't wait for it. This is Jake the Snake Silva signing off here. Have a great weekend and have a great week ahead.